Hi everyone! So I feel like quite a few people who will stumble across this video are nearing their end of high school education and are figuring out what path they want to take, or are other people who are just thinking about taking a new direction in life. And making that decision to seek higher education can be really scary. Most notably because of the expenses, and I won't lie when I say that fashion school does tend to be one of the more expensive degrees to take, mostly because of the additional expenses you have to pay for materials and course resources. Please note that I am no fashion industry veteran. I graduated in 2020, but I was extremely lucky in order to jump straight into a lead product designer role at a pre-established company. That is virtually unheard of in the industry, so please don't take it as fact that if you graduate then you're going to get the same thing. And I'm only saying this because I feel like I have somewhat of a fresh take on the skills that I gained from fashion school and was able to carry straight into my industry job. I don't talk about my designer job online mostly for privacy reasons and because it is very, very different to the stuff that I create on here, which is for myself and for you guys. Because unfortunately, I don't make a living off these videos as much as I would love to. Instead, I design lifestyle clothing for another company. Also take note that I studied fashion design in New Zealand, which do tend to have a slightly different way of teaching as opposed to overseas. The course I studied was a Bachelor of Design, which specialised in fashion design and technology. It's available at a range of universities and other institutions in New Zealand. The course itself is usually between 3 or 4 years, but there are also options to take a diploma as well as a certificate. Certificate level is good if you're very new to actually the practical side of fashion, such as sewing or pattern making, before you jump into the degree course because it's quite a lot more intensive. It's also an option if you're still unsure if this is the path you want to take, because the course is usually between 6 months to a year. And if you are quite serious about studying fashion, then I would recommend getting the degree level over the diploma, because I think degree is starting to become more of the baseline of what the industry expects of you to have as experience. I mean, unless you already have some kind of footing in the fashion industry itself, it's a lot easier to just have that education behind you. And I should probably mention that we all know the stories about how cutthroat the fashion industry is, and I am more than willing to admit that I am still very naive when it comes to being an established designer in the industry, because I am not. But I can tell you already from experience that if you are wanting to be a designer and you're wanting to really advance in your career, you have to be for it 110%. You can't just be on the fence about it. I mean, it really depends on what part of the industry and the world that you're wanting to be in, but I know that in New Zealand our industry is very small, so our customers are usually very particular about what they want. It is not unexpected of people to actually travel overseas to a much bigger market and industry in order to pursue their career. So I'd recommend just having a wee think about, if you're wanting to pursue this degree, then where would you like to go with it? And have a wee think about what interests you the most about fashion, because it might not necessarily be exclusive to fashion. You know, is it purely the visuals and the glamour of it all? Or is it, putting together a show or telling a story? Or is it even just, everything packed into one? And in the fashion and apparel industry, becoming a designer isn't the end all be all. There's actually some very interesting other jobs that you can take if that's something that might interest you more. There's options available either here or overseas in pattern making, tailoring, construction, sewing, sampling. There's a whole lot more. And that in itself makes it quite difficult to answer the question whether fashion school is worth it. Is it worth the costs involved? And in some ways it does depend on your situation, but if you're wanting to get into design, business, pattern making, garment construction, especially if you're wanting to get into working in an industry with small or big manufacturers and customers, then I think it's worth the cost. Typically, I mean, it does depend on the school. You should always contact the school if you're wanting to learn more about what they may specialize in. But typically schools do show you the groundwork for all of that and gives you a really good baseline to give you the support and tools to actually enter the industry once you finish. And there are often workplaces that have that expectation that you do have some sort of degree or tertiary education in the field of design before you can work there. However, I do want to also go on a wee tangent and just say that in my opinion, the biggest limitation of fashion school is that it doesn't show you the true experience of actually working in a place like that. I mean, it taught me the ideas and the terminology I needed, but the actual experience of applying them is completely different. Things like maintaining business relationships, product cost, and all the emails, my god. It's not all just, playing with fabrics and photo shoots, even though that is involved. There are some long days in the office and you're just staring at a computer and the last thing on your mind is designing a new product. And I don't mean to paint my experience to be all bleak and boring, because I actually really enjoy what I do. But it's just to say that I've seen a little bit of this, you know, beautiful fluff and idealized view of what it's like to be a fashion designer. It's all completely worth it in the end. I absolutely love what I do, but there is a grind to get there, and I don't think that is explored nearly as much as it should be. And if sitting in front of a computer all day doesn't interest you, then there are other options that you can look for in the industry, such as becoming a machinist or doing more handcrafted one-off pieces, you know, such as bridal wear. But it's also good to keep in mind that these kind of skills are shown more with demonstration and showing that you have those skills rather than the theory of it, because fashion school does focus a lot on the theory as well. Fashion school, I think, would still benefit a lot because it does teach you the groundwork of those skills, but another part of fashion school itself is that it does go through, you know, everything all at once. It is quite condensed, so you don't really get the chance to hone in on a specific skill, or at least until, you know, your last year or so. So there is a bit of a contention between if you want to focus more on the practical side or more on the theoretical side. And if you already know what you want to specialize in, then you can actually benefit probably just as much from actually working under somebody in the industry, like apprenticeship, internship, or, you know, full-time paid work if you are lucky enough to get that. You know, if, you know, you manage to get that, then not only are you honing the skills in the field that you want, but you're also able to, you know, build on those skills and eventually, you know, build your own portfolio. If going to school isn't really an option for you, I don't really have the experience to say what it's like to actually get work without having that degree behind you. I would like to think it's not impossible to seek work without, you know, a tertiary education, but it's already quite difficult for people to get work in design with a degree, so I cannot imagine what it's like without one. Appealing to employers and your hireability is very often based on the technical skills you have that will benefit them, and that is often shown through your resume, CV, and your portfolio that you have. You can't just expect them to take your word for it, especially in such a competitive industry. If you have the ideas, but you don't have the actual portfolio of your work to show them what you are capable of, then you do need to take the time to put one together. Making a portfolio does take a very long amount of time, as I've experienced, and at least if you study the degree, then you eventually just compile enough work that can work really well as a baseline for your first portfolio. A lot of the stuff on my website is actually from my classwork, but I've just edited it and compiled it to look a bit more presentable for my portfolio. Even today, I'm just updating it regularly as a way to show, you know, what I'm doing and what I'm doing next. And this all kind of starts into my next part of this entire video, which is how do you even break into the industry to talk to those people? If you're like me, like a lot of people, I didn't grow up anywhere near the fashion industry, didn't have friends or family that were involved, I didn't have any direct connections. I had and still have quite a lot of social anxiety, so I think it's quite, you know, hard to think about just how do you begin making that approach. Networking is one of the necessary evils in the fashion industry. It's necessary in a lot of industries, really. While I can't guarantee your experience will be the same as mine, I did meet a lot of classmates who are in the exact same boat as me. We all connected with each other, as well as all the tutors. They each have their own little connections to local industries, and we would also get tips on ideas on places that were either seeking work or seeking internships or something like that. And through the school itself, I met other photographers and models, and while most of us were students, at least we were able to share in those skills. And through some connections at the school, I ended up with my current job. So as biased as my opinion is, I do think it is worthwhile to at least, you know, build the groundwork for starting a network, even if it's just within the school. Also, I don't know if this needs saying, but computer literacy is extremely important when it comes to being a designer. Microsoft Excel is your best friend for making spec packs, and if you don't really know much about Excel, then I would recommend taking a course. I know it's boring, but it is definitely worth it. And if you don't know what spec packs are and you're wanting to get into big industry manufacturing stuff, then I would recommend going to fashion school, because that is extremely important and it is basically all I do. However, I will say that it is quite common for entry-level designer jobs that you actually aren't really designing. It's more about either assistant work or just doing a very specific part of the design process. And even then, when you become a designer, a lot of it isn't actually drawing and making pretty stuff. It's about the entire process to get there, and that is a lot of grind work. It's not always a glamorous job, as I've said before, but I think it's all worth it to get there and, you know, have the product in retail or worn by customers, and it is a wonderful feeling. I know there's also the option for graduates to look at making their own brand, you know, essentially making your own job. And I can't really speak on what this is like because I haven't done it myself, and there are a few reasons for why that is the case. Personally, I know that I am very inexperienced even with a degree. It is very expensive starting up, let alone maintaining a business. And because I don't have this confidence in doing my own brand just yet, I would much rather work under somebody who is already pre-established and learn all the, you know, ins and outs of the industry well before, you know, 5, 10, 20 years down the line, I might do it myself. And honestly, in my first year of working in the industry, the amount of stuff I have learned is just mind-blowing. It might not be the same for everyone because I understand that I am in a very, very privileged position. But I'm just saying all of this because I want to demonstrate that even once you finish your degree, there's still plenty of things to learn and you never stop learning. If you have any questions, then please let me know in the comments down below or even contact me on one of my socials. It's a bit of a convoluted topic, but I hope this just shows you a little bit more about the experience from somebody who's already gone through that. And COVID does still have a grip on the fashion industry. I am reminded of that on a daily basis. But I don't think that should stop someone from seeking a higher education if it suits their situation and their interests. With all of that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you'll have a wonderful day and I will see you later. Bye!